I found the Sullivan family car at a day-use turnout below a granite basin that should have been empty by late afternoon. The basin sat off a spur trail east of Yosemite Valley, beautiful enough to tempt day hikers and broken enough to punish bad timing. I worked search and rescue for the Park Service, which meant people handed me their worst afternoons and trusted me to bring the missing person out before dark, weather or water made rescue impossible. The rental SUV still held the shape of a family day: 2 child booster seats in the back, a pack of crackers on the floorboard, a folded paper map with the main valley routes circled in red marker. At the top, in broad block letters, somebody had written picnic and Lower Falls, like he meant to keep the day easy and clear. A woman's sweater hung over the passenger seat. A stuffed fox with one eye missing lay under the back seat where a child had kicked it. The father's phone sat dead on the dash beneath cracked glass. Dispatch had handed me a slim family packet at the trailhead. Permit copy, rental plate, emergency contacts. One printout came from the father's cloud after cell service died, a breakfast photo from the lodge that morning. Father, mother, older daughter, younger son. Clean clothes, paper cups, everyone still smiling because the day had not learned their names yet. I crouched by the driver's door and studied the dust. 4 sets of prints had gone out. 2 adult, 2 child. That part fit. The angle did not. The family had left the turnout, crossed scrub and broken stone, and climbed toward a basin with no marked trail and no reason to enter it after lunch. Somebody had tried to flag a route back. Blue painter's tape hung from a bitterbrush branch. A torn strip of map paper sat under a rock cairn the size of my boot. That told me more than the prints did. A calm family on a picnic does not start marking an exit. A scared father does. My radio sat on my shoulder strap, quiet for half a minute, then cracked alive. Ben! Dispatch used my call sign on the job. My first name came from friends, ex-wives, and one boy who lived with his mother in Modesto and answered my calls every other weekend if school and baseball and the rest of a 14-year-old life left him room. I pressed the transmit button. "Say again," a girl answered in a burst of static. "Please come get me." Too young for the mother, too steady for panic. The last word stretched thin into a scratch. I pulled the radio off my shoulder and shut it down. Above me, the basin gathered late sun in broad yellow sheets over clean granite. Snowmelt ran in a silver line down the rock face and vanished into a crease that did not belong there. I knew this part of the park. I had worked carries out of gullies, hauled tourists off ledges, packed a dead climber past those same boulders in winter. That wall should have held a slope of white stone with scattered pine and a dry seam where runoff cut across in spring. Instead, the water disappeared into something deeper. I started up anyway. Searchmen like me live by a simple rule: fresh sign first. Get ahead of the dark. Do not wait for perfect understanding when somebody is still moving and warm. The rule had saved people for me before. I had found a lost boy under a fallen cedar because I ignored a map that said there was no drainage there. I had reached a diabetic man beside the Merced because I cut away from the marked trail and trusted broken reeds and candy wrappers in the sand. It had also cost me. Years ago, I stayed too long on a river search because I could not stop believing a child might still be snagged alive in an eddy somewhere upstream. We found the body 2 counties down. My captain told me afterward that hope and denial wear the same coat in bad light. I remembered the sentence. I never liked it. Halfway up the slope, I found a child's shoe print in a mud patch on bare stone. Small. Deep at the toe, the mark of a kid pulled by an adult moving too fast. Beside it, one adult boot had skidded and left a long grey streak. Near the top, another bit of blue tape clung to a juniper twig, snapping in a wind I could not feel lower down. I stopped at the last place I could still see the turnout. My partner, Luis Ortega, would bring the rest of the team up the lower trail once he finished clearing another sector. Luis had worked rescues in the park nearly as long as I had, and he trusted my field notes more than any digital pin. I took out my write in the rain pad and wrote the time, direction of travel, and the strange seam in the rock. I tucked the note into a crack under a cairn where he would find it. Then I climbed the final shelf and saw the opening. Light hit the wet granite at an angle that turned stone into depth. The seam had widened into a narrow cleft lined with water-bright walls. Beyond it lay a drop and a wash of green I could not place. Trees stood down there where none should have grown in that amount of shadow. The whole thing looked less like a hidden canyon than a slit cut into the side of the world. My phone came out by habit. The screen lit, showed the map app for a blink, then filled with blue water and a location tag in the middle of the Pacific. I shut it off and slid it back into my pocket. The radio, still powered down, clicked against my chest. A child's voice came through the dead speaker. "Mum said stay where you can see us." I stared at it, then left it off. The gap carried prints into the dark, 4 going in, none coming out. I took my headlamp from my pack, hesitated and put it back. Enough daylight for a first push. Better to save batteries. I checked my paper map, compass, field dressing, water, flare gun, lighter, sidearm. Then I stepped into the cleft. The temperature dropped at once. Water ran over the stone under my boots in a film as thin as glass. After 10 yards, the rock bent and shut the outside light behind me. After 20, I heard running water below, birds above, and a sound like somebody dragging a heavy coat through brush. Then the passage opened, and the world I knew ended. A valley lay below me, where no valley had any right to be. It stretched farther than the basin could have held, wider than the contour lines on every map in my truck. Slopes fell into a meadow dark with thaw water. Bone-white trees rose from it in loose groves, each trunk wrapped in black strands that caught the light the way wet hair does. Beyond the meadow, a red glare moved over a far ridge as if another season burned a mile away. Above it all hung a sky the colour of old pewter with no sun I could point to. I turned back and laid my hand on the cleft behind me. Granite met my palm, smooth and solid. The opening had sealed. A smarter man might have sat down then and worried every angle of that fact before taking another step. I started downhill because somewhere below me, a child began to cry. The slope took me into the thaw meadow by way of broken stone and slick mud. I marked my route with orange survey tape and a line on my map. My compass spun twice, paused, and aimed west. I turned in a full circle. It still aimed west, even when west sat behind me and to my left and somewhere down in the black water at my feet. That narrowed my choices. Old methods only. Terrain, current, light, and memory. The white trees near the meadow had no bark. Up close I saw their trunks were packed from something closer to bone than wood. Long, pale lengths woven together with black strands buried in the seams. At shoulder height, one trunk held a rusted tent stake half-grown into its side. Another had a child's plastic bracelet set deep beneath the surface like a fossil. I kept moving. A low patch of water spread ahead of me, dark enough to hide its depth. Something shifted there, pale under the surface. Then a face broke clear and a girl said, "Please." She lay half-sunk in black meltwater, pinned from below by white roots wrapped around her legs and waist. Brown hair plastered to her skull. Purple rain jacket. One cheek scraped raw. About 10 years old. The breakfast photo in my vest pocket had shown the older daughter in that same jacket, one front tooth gone, making fox ears behind her brother's head while her mother laughed. Lucy Sullivan. "I'm Ranger Mercer," I said as I splashed toward her. "I've got you. What hurts?" "Cold. Anything broken?" She shook her head once. I hit mud, sank to mid-calf, and nearly pitched forward. Hard shapes lay under the mud. My boot struck something curved and smooth as riverstone. I reached down and came up holding part of a human skull. I let it go, shifted my footing, and got my knife out. The roots around Lucy were white as fresh antler and jointed in places where roots had no business bending. When I cut one, it bled black water. Lucy watched my face while I worked. "Dad said not to come after me," she said. "Good thing I make a habit of ignoring bad instructions." That got the smallest smile from her. It hit me harder than it should have. For a blink, I saw my son at 8, muddy to the knees after falling in the Tuolumne, trying not to cry because I was there and fathers fix things. The body remembers old reflexes faster than the mind can sort them. Find the child, get her breathing, everything else can wait. I cut the last root and pulled. Lucy came free with a sucking sound from the mud and slammed into me hard enough to knock us both sideways. For an instant, I saw beneath the meltwater. Bodies lay under the surface in layers, jackets and bones and old packs pressed together by pale root growth. Some looked recent. I got Lucy onto firmer ground and wrapped her in a thermal blanket. Her skin was cold enough to numb my palm through the foil when I checked her neck. Fast pulse, shallow breathing, pupils equal. She looked at me with clear brown eyes. "Where's your mum?" I asked. "In the hot place," she said. "Dad took Sam there because he thought a ranger station meant phones." "Which way?" She pointed across the meadow toward the red glow on the far ridge. "That way." The gesture came quick and certain. Too certain. A child half drowned in meltwater usually clung to one fact at a time. Lucy spoke like somebody giving directions home. A sound drifted from the trees to our right. "Lucy." A woman's voice. Warm, tired, human. The kind that calls a child in from a yard at dusk. Lucy stood at once. The blanket slid into the mud. "Mum!" I caught her wrist before she could take a step. The trees shifted. A deer walked out from behind one trunk with a limp that clicked against stone. It had a deer's head and antlers, but its front legs bent wrong, too many joints stacked under the chest. Parts of its coat looked sewn from pieces that belonged to different animals. Its mouth opened, and Erin Sullivan's voice came out again. "Lucy, honey, come here!" The flare gun hung on my pack strap. I ripped it loose, aimed center mass, and fired. The red flare struck the deer's shoulder and burst bright enough to carve the grove in harsh light. The animal reared, gave a shrill cry in a child's voice, and bolted into the trees on those many-jointed legs. Lucy fought me for half a second with surprising force. Then she sagged. "It uses moms," she said. "What use is moms?" She looked past me at the black water. "This place." That should have made me stop and recalculate everything. Instead, I got the blanket back around her shoulders and told myself what every rescuer tells himself when he wants one good fact to stay good. Kids say wild things when cold and terror have been working on them. I got her moving. She walked without a limp, even though the roots had cinched her hard enough that I expected bruising or torn skin. Mud dripped off her jeans. She did not shiver. Now and then she glanced toward the water behind us like she was trying to remember where she had left something. I cut my palm on a root nub while cleaning my knife. It was a shallow line across the base of my thumb. I rinsed it with canteen water, taped it, and forgot it. The meadow sloped toward a wall of stone where the world changed color. One step I was in damp thaw ground with black water at my boots. The next I crossed into heat. Rock underfoot turned dry and warm. Pines gave way to blackened trunks. Ash rode the air in slow grey threads. Far above, the sky glowed orange through smoke-coloured haze. Lucy lifted her face to it like a kid feeling sunlight after a long car ride. "This is where Sam cried," she said. "Sam's your brother." Her eyes came to me. He was scared. The answer landed off by half an inch. A child might say it. A child usually would not start there. I kept her at my left side and moved along a shallow draw toward what looked like a squat building under a ridge. As we got closer, the thing resolved into the shape of a ranger station built from pieces that should never have met. Timber beams, antlers locked into the corners like braces, a door lintel studded with human teeth, old green roof panels twisted over a frame of ribs and poles. A weathered sign by the entrance still held the ghost of a park emblem under soot. I had seen stations all over the Sierra, one-room sheds and backcountry cabins built to cache tools or shelter a ranger in weather. This one wore that shape the way a carcass wears crows. "Hello, the cabin," I called. A man answered from inside. "If you brought a shovel, leave it outside." His voice carried age, education, and enough pain to strip all polish from the words. I pushed the door open and stepped in with Lucy behind me. The room held a desk fused into one wall, shelves grown from bone and wood, and a stove with antler tines for legs. A man sat half upright against the far corner beneath a blanket. He looked about 60, with a grey beard gone wild and skin stretched thin over sharp cheekbones. His lower body vanished into the wall from the hips down. Pale growth had come through his pants and the planks around him and turned both into one thing. "I'm Ben Mercer, National Park Service," I said. "This is Lucy Sullivan. We're looking for the rest of her family." The man nodded once. "Arthur Pike. I taught geology at Fresno State before I took a walk in the wrong season and lost 20 years. He said it like a man reciting his date of birth in a clinic waiting room. Too long past disbelief to waste energy on it. I set Lucy on a stool by the stove and crouched near him. Dark, wet patches marked the blanket where tissue met the pale growth. He saw my eyes go there. "You can spare me the decent silence," he said. "The wall got to my legs 3 shifts ago. I stay alive until it wants those legs somewhere else." I opened my medic kit. "Can you feel any of it?" "More than I deserve." He watched me sort gauze, then jerked his chin toward my chest. "Keep the phone and radio dead. That matters first. This place hates current. Every charge you wake up rings a bell for it." My radio talked while it was off. Of course it did. He gave a dry laugh that ended in pain. I asked about the family. He answered in short pieces, each one bought hard. "A man and woman came through, boy crying, woman bleeding from the side. Man had a cut on his arm. They passed here 1 turn ago, maybe 2. Went toward rot because green reads like mercy to people who still trust it." He shifted, swallowed, breathed shallowly until the spasm passed. "Listen now, and don't make me repeat myself. The wounded get marked fastest. Cuts, breaks, bad blood loss. This valley gets hooks in anywhere the body has already opened. If a person dies here and later walks, do not bargain with what comes back." His eyes moved to Lucy. He did not hide it. The girl crossed over. Lucy swung her feet. "You said that before." Arthur went still. "When?" I asked. "Yesterday, when the rain came." Arthur shook his head once. "She was not here yesterday." I found his pulse. Thin, fast, real. His pupils reacted normally. Living man, long entrapment, plenty of reasons to mix hours. A useful explanation presented itself, and I took it because I wanted it. Arthur saw that too. "You have rescue habits," he said. "I had them in my own field. We both think a hard thing turns soft if we keep working it." He nodded at the papers on the table beside him. Topographic sketches, water lines, angles, a map redrawn so many times the folds had become fuzz. "The exit matters second. There's a seam in the outer wall. It opens when light-off thaw water hits the west face right. Minutes at best. Longer if the valley wants the door open. Carry something wounded to the seam and watch how eager the stone gets." That sentence sat in the room like a snake by my boot. I looked at Lucy, then away. Arthur kept going, slower now. "The seasons lie beside each other here. Thaw, fire, rot, freeze, boundaries move. Order mostly holds if you live long enough to map it. The valley builds from what comes in. Wood, wire, cloth, bone, skin, memory. Nothing wasted." He caught my sleeve with a grip that had almost no strength and all the force in the room. "You can still save the untouched ones. The boy, maybe. The father, if luck stayed with him. But if the girl died in black water and walked later, the valley has a hand inside her. She's breathing, I said. She talks. She knows her name. A crow knows how to use a zipper. That does not make him your daughter. Lucy leaned toward me and whispered, "He gets mean before the change." Arthur shut his eyes for one beat. That is also true. I should have listened then. Every rule he gave me fit a fact I had already seen. But Lucy sat 3 feet away, wrapped in foil, small shoulders drawn up, scraped cheek, damp sneakers planted on the floor like any lost kid in shock. I had worked enough scenes with children to know how adults fail them by deciding too early that they are gone. That belief sat in me deep and hot. The valley only had to lean on it. "I need the family," I said. Arthur gave me the look old cops and fire captains give when they see a man choose the wrong hope because it hurts less than the right one. He tapped the top page with a yellow nail. A sketched throat of stone, a shelf, a seam, notes about water glare and mirror line. "Take the map. And when the next shift comes, shoot me through the mouth, quick and straight. Once the wall takes my chest, I stay aware longer than you would like." I had killed deer with shattered backs. I had shot a climber once after a rockfall opened him to the pelvis and left him in a place no helicopter could reach before dark and snow. Mercy was not foreign to me. Still, I said, "I'm bringing help." Arthur smiled with half his mouth. "You are bringing a map. That will have to do." Lucy slid off the stool. "Sam is waiting." I took Arthur's pages, promised what I had no means to deliver, and led her back into the heat. Beyond a shelf of cracked stone and dead manzanita, fire gave way to wet green gloom. The rot corridor opened under trees loaded with shelf growths the size of dinner plates. Rain tapped the leaves above us. Water ran down my neck inside my collar. The ground gave like mulch over worse things. The valley kept showing its accounting, but I moved faster now and let less of it in. A blind made from trekking poles and old coats, a fork grown into a branch, a collapsed tent half taken by fungus and roots. Enough to know the place had been at this work a long time. The farther we went, the more Lucy seemed to know when to duck, when to turn, when to avoid the darkest patches under the trees. Each time she did, she gave me the same look a child gives when pleased to be useful. I told myself that was all it was. I found the parents by hearing the father first. "Stop there." The voice came from ahead and right, behind a screen of broad leaves. I froze and lifted one hand. A man stepped out holding a branch sharpened to a point. Late 30s, broad-shouldered, beard grown in, one sleeve dark with old blood. The breakfast photo had shown him shaved and grinning over a paper cup. Fear had worked on him since then. "Mark Sullivan?" I asked. His eyes went to Lucy. Everything in his face broke and hardened in the same second. Behind him, under a rough shelter built from bent branches and layered ponchos, a woman struggled up on one elbow. Erin Sullivan, blonde hair plastered to her forehead, face grey with blood loss, her right side bound with strips torn from a shirt patterned with little yellow oranges, the kind of cheerful thing somebody buys for a family trip because it photographs well. A little boy crouched beside her, clutching the eyeless fox from the SUV. Sam. Erin saw Lucy and made a sound that landed between a sob and a laugh. Mark took one step back instead of forward. "You found her," Erin said. "Where?" Mark asked. "In the Thor meadow." He looked at me, then at Lucy again. His hand tightened on the sharpened branch until the knuckles blanched. "She fell into the black water yesterday morning." Lucy said, "Dad told me to hold the branch." Mark flinched like she had struck him. I moved slowly, keeping my hands visible, and brought them up to speed. "Ranger, search and rescue. Outer team should be near my note by now." I had a partial map from a trapped survivor and a likely route toward an exit if the light held. I kept Arthur's warning about Lucy back for the moment because I needed the whole family moving before I split them further. Mark did it for me. "She came back wrong," he said. Erin turned on him at once. "Mark! You saw it. I saw my daughter come out of the trees. She came out after the pool took her." Lucy stood with the foil blanket around her shoulders and watched her parents argue about her as if she were weather moving in. Sam stared at his sister with a child's desperate hope. He wanted the shape more than the truth. I said, "Tell me exactly what happened." Mark kept his eyes on Lucy while he talked. The family had gone off trail chasing a view. He owned the mistake. Erin had wanted the easy route, the lower falls, lunch on a flat rock where Sam could throw pebbles and Lucy could draw in the map margins. Mark had seen the seam in the granite and thought there might be a hidden falls below, something worth the extra climb. Once inside, the phones died and the world changed. Lucy slipped near the thaw pool while he was hauling Erin up a bank. He had gone in after her, come up coughing black water, and seen his daughter under the surface with white roots pulling at her. Erin had held him back because the mud around the pool started moving like something waking. They lost sight of Lucy. An hour later, maybe less, maybe more, Lucy walked out of the trees dry from the waist up and asked where Sam had gone. "After that, every hide turned into a path," Mark said. "Every time we thought we were tucked away, something found us. She'd look one direction and a route would open. She'd say she was cold and the whole place would change." Erin swallowed against pain. She knew where water was. She knew when the rain would stop. She found Sam when I lost him in the trees. Her voice shook, but there was steel in it too. Lucy has always done that. She hears one cry in a crowded room and goes straight to it. Mark turned to her. So much love and fury sat together in his face I could see why the day had broken him open. "That was our girl," he said. "Whatever this is knows how to wear her." Lucy gave him a wounded look so precise it hit every parental reflex in a man. And there was my mistake in its cleanest form. I had seen fathers harden the wrong way before. I had seen shock turn decent men cruel to stay upright. So I looked at Mark through old damage and trusted my pity more than his field report. I checked Erin's wound. Jagged cut across the lower ribs, deep enough to worry me, already warm at the edges. I gave her water and a pain pill. "We move now," I said. "The entrance is real. I've got a map." Mark's mouth tightened. "With her? With all of you?" He looked at me the way Arthur had, only younger. Sam tugged Erin's sleeve. "Mom, I heard you in the trees." "You're hearing lures," I said. "Nothing answers unless you see the face attached to it." Sam nodded, but his eyes slid back to Lucy. The rain eased. Green light shifted through the leaves. Lucy turned her head toward the grove beyond the shelter. "He's close," she said. "Who?" I asked. "Sam." Sam blinked. "I'm right here." Lucy pointed past him into the trees. "The other one." Mark moved first, branch up. I took Erin under the arm and pushed in behind him with Sam tight to my side. We crossed a runnel lined with half-buried gear. A cracked bear canister, 3 trekking poles, a metal lunchbox from some cartoon I half remembered from Owen's childhood. The valley had been collecting families longer than any missing person board in the ranger office could explain. The runnel opened into a blind made from raincoats, rope and a frame of pale curved bones driven into the mud. Inside sat another Sam. My mind rejected him at once because my hand already held the real boy's shoulder. But the child in the blind wore the same green dinosaur shirt, the same dirty cheeks, the same fox sewn on one knee. "Mom!" the blind boy called. Erin cried out. Mark shoved her behind him. Lucy smiled. Then the blind boy's mouth stretched too wide. Its jaw split at the corners, and the call came again in Erin's voice. I drew my pistol and fired once. The thing folded backward into the blind. Under the shirt and skin there was little but wet, pale growth bound in a child shape. Sam screamed and clamped onto my leg. The shot changed the grove. Every tree around us began answering in borrowed voices. Men calling for help, a woman asking for water, a child laughing from too many directions. Mark drove the sharpened branch into a shape rushing the edge of the blind, and I caught only antlers and a human hand wired into fur. I shoved Sam ahead of me. We ran. The boundary into freeze hit us just past a line of standing dead trunks. Rain became hard white crystals biting my face. The ground glazed over under a skin of ice that thickened with every step. Erin stumbled. I hauled her up. Sam clung to my pack strap. Lucy moved through the cold like she had found her weather at last. Arthur's notes named a west seam and a mirror line at dusk. I pulled the pages out under the cover of a rock shelf, while Mark crouched with the branch across his knees, and Erin breathed through her pain in short, hard bursts. The sketch showed the entrance basin from inside, or close enough. A freeze chamber fed into a narrow granite throat. Beyond that, thaw water on a ledge threw light toward the seam at the right angle. Arthur had marked and crossed out routes so many times he had nearly worn through the page. "We go by the ice run," I said. "Up the broken pillars to the throat." Mark glanced at the compass hanging from my thumb. The needle spun like a toy. He gave a humorless bark of laughter. "Good. At least something here still knows how to joke." Sam had begun crying quietly. Erin put one hand on his hair without looking at him. Lucy sat on a stone and watched white patterns spread through the ice at her boots. I had one powered tool left that might give me an edge, a spare radio battery wrapped in plastic in my pack. Arthur had warned me. I knew that. But the seam might open and close within minutes. Erin was weakening. Mark's cut had soaked through his sleeve again. A clean signal burst. Maybe contact with Luis or anybody on the outside could save all of us. That is how bad choices talk. They borrow the language of responsibility. They stand up in your own uniform and call themselves rescue. I clicked the battery into the radio and powered it on. The valley answered before any human voice could. Ice under us cracked in long, reaching lines. The trees across the basin leaned as if hit by wind, though my face felt only dead cold. The radio speaker gave a shriek of overlapping words. Some belonged to Arthur, some to Lucy. One belonged to Owen at 8, asking whether I could come to Korea day after I had already told him I could not get off shift. I killed the radio and threw it. It skidded over the ice, struck a white trunk, and disappeared when the trunk opened along one seam and took it in. Shapes moved under the ice, long, pale bodies weaving together beneath the blue skin of the basin. "Run," Mark said. We did, and Erin lasted 6 strides before her wounded side failed. She went down on one knee and slid. I dropped for her. Mark grabbed Sam. Lucy stood still. A section of ice sheared under Mark's left leg. He plunged thigh-deep into black water webbed with white growth. He hit the edge with both hands and swore through clenched teeth. I reached him and saw at once he was caught. Pale roots had wrapped his boot and lower leg under the ice, pinning him in a tangle of old bones and branches. His face had gone chalk white. "Pull," he said. I braced and pulled. Nothing gave. The roots only tightened. Through the clear ice I could see them creeping higher around his calf. Erin dragged herself to him. The bandage at her side had come loose. White threads, thin as worms, pressed out through the blood at the wound and twitched in the cold. That was the final proof. Arthur had been right from the first sentence. "Ben," Mark said, "take Sam. I can cut you free. You can cut the leg off. You do not have the time." His eyes flicked towards Lucy. She had moved closer to the basin and now stood with one palm on a bone-white trunk. Cracks ran out from her boots in neat branching lines. "Leave her," Mark said. Erin slapped him weakly. "Stop. She's already gone. She is standing right there. She is the reason every road goes deeper." Lucy turned toward him. Her face held hurt, anger, and something older than either. Sam sobbed. "Dad, please." Mark reached for his son and caught only Jacket when I pulled the boy back. "Listen to me," he said to Sam. "You stay with the ranger. You do what he says. You do not follow any voice you hear unless you see his face." "Dad!" Mark looked at me. "You still trying to save all of us?" I opened my mouth and found that the words had run out. Erin made the choice for me. She lifted one hand from the ice. The rootlets at her side had spread under her shirt, drawing the fabric inward with tiny jerks. Her eyes were clear. Her mouth trembled once. She looked at Sam, then at me. "Do it before he sees more," she said. I had the pistol in my hand before I knew I had drawn it. The shot in the grove had been for a mimic thing. This one was for a woman trying to spare her son one more image. I stepped around Sam so he would see less, pressed the muzzle to Erin's temple, and fired. The sound cracked across the basin and came back from the trees in half a dozen stolen voices. Erin folded sideways into Mark's arms. For 1 second he closed his eyes against her hair. Then he opened them, and there was no anger in them for me at all, which made it worse. "Go!" he said. Something hit from below. A ridge of blue shattered toward us. Mark jerked as roots pulled his trapped leg deeper. He shoved Erin's body away from the opening and drove both palms against the edge to hold himself high for one last second. I grabbed Sam under the arms. Lucy watched with that awful calm. Mark looked at his daughter, then away from her. It was the smallest movement in the world. It felt like a mountain giving up. "Save the boy," he said. Then the ice gave way under his chest and the basin took him. I ran. Sam stumbled beside me, breath tearing in short bursts. Lucy moved ahead now, glancing back every dozen steps as if checking whether we kept up. I should have left her then. Mark had paid enough to buy that lesson for me, but a child still wore her face, and my own mind had years of training wired into it. Carry the injured, gather the lost. Nobody gets left if there is a route out. The granite throat Arthur had sketched rose from the freeze basin in a line of broken pillars and slick stone. I pushed Sam through first and climbed after him into a narrow passage where blue ice gave way to dripping walls. My taped palm throbbed. I tore the tape back to check the cut. White fibres sat under the skin around it, firm and branching like the first roots under thin soil. I wrapped it again and said nothing. The throat opened onto a shelf above thaw water. Beyond it stood the seam in the granite wall, a smooth panel leaning slightly inward, wet with runoff from above. Thin evening light reached the shelf at a low angle. Arthur's mirror line. The exit lay somewhere on the other side of that stone if I could catch the light right. I set Sam behind a boulder and took out my signal mirror. Steel square, sight hole, standard backcountry gear. Up here it might throw the water glare into the seam and wake the opening. Lucy stood 10 feet away at the edge of the shelf. Her hair had dried, though no fire had touched it. Mud still streaked her jeans. She looked like a kid after a hard day on a trail right up until you met her eyes and saw patience there that had never belonged to any 10-year-old. "Sam first," I said. He clutched the stuffed fox and nodded, not understanding what he was agreeing to. Lucy said, "You can all come if you hurry." That sentence broke something in me. Arthur in the station, Mark under the ice, Erin asking me to spare her son one more sight. Every bad choice I had, dressed up as hope, stood all at once and called itself by its right name. I looked at Lucy, and finally saw both truths together. A girl had died in black water. Something else had used the shape her parents could not leave behind. The valley had opened around my refusal to admit that. It had led us chamber to chamber by the oldest rope there is. Love. "You knew the way because you were part of the way," I said. Lucy's face went slack, then older. "I was cold." A child's answer, and the valley's answer in the same breath. "You opened the paths. I showed you where people were, so the valley could feed." Her gaze moved to my wrapped hand. "It likes you now." That was true. The cut had become a claim. Carry enough of this place in your blood, and the door would treat you as hinge instead of traveller. If I forced Lucy through, if I dragged my own infected body after her, I would not be extracting victims. I would be opening a road. I angled the mirror, caught a stripe of late light off the thaw water, and drove it onto the seam. The granite brightened. A dark line appeared, thin as a pencil mark. Water on the stone drew upward against gravity in silver beads. Lucy smiled. There. White roots pushed from the opening line at once, questing toward the outer world before the gap had widened a foot. The valley was already reaching. Sam stood behind me. Ben? I kept the mirror steady with one hand and drew the pistol with the other. Lucy saw it and for the first time since the meadow, looked truly young. Don't, she said. The word cut clean because for one sliver of a second I heard the real girl in it. Maybe Arthur had been wrong in one small way. Maybe the valley never took anybody whole. Maybe some scraps stayed aware inside what used their shape. That possibility made the choice worse. It did not change it. You should have been the first mercy, I said. Tears filled her eyes. I want my mum. So did Sam. So did every father and son and husband and wife whose bones held this valley up. I shot Lucy through the heart. She fell backward onto the stone shelf, small and sudden and horribly ordinary. Blood spread under her jacket, red in the failing light. The roots pushing from the seam jerked once and withdrew a few inches, as if a line had gone slack. Lucy's chest rose once more, her mouth moved. Cold, she whispered. Then the valley took what was left of that voice away. Sam screamed and lunged toward her. I caught him around the chest and hauled him back. He kicked and fought until the opening widened enough to show the real world beyond. Dusk over familiar granite, pine tops, the last gold light where it belonged. There's the way out, I told him. You run to the first person you see. Tell him there's a seam in the rock and it has to stay shut. He stared at the opening, then at Lucy's body, then at me. Children adapt to horror faster than adults because they still believe action can repair it. He wanted a task. I gave him one. I shoved Arthur's map packet into his jacket. Mark's wedding ring had ended up in my pocket at the basin when I steadied him on the ice. I tucked it into Sam's hand. For your dad, I said. He closed his fist around it. Come with me. I tried. I dragged Sam toward the seam with my bad hand on the back of his jacket, and my good shoulder into the gap. Cold evening air from Yosemite hit my face clean and real. Then my right arm locked. White growth burst from the cut in my palm and ran into the seam like a stake driven through a hinge. Pain shot to the shoulder. I shoved harder. The stone held. On the outer edge of the opening, the roots began to reach again, slower now. Testing. There was one move left. I dropped the pistol, snatched the flare gun from my belt and fired it into the thaw water above the shelf. Steam burst up. The light angle broke as the water surface shattered and ran. The seam shuddered. Go, I said to Sam, and put my left hand on him and launched him through. He hit the granite outside on hands and knees and rolled. Voices rose at once from the real world. Men running. Luis among them, I think, though I never saw his face clearly through the narrowing gap. Ben! Somebody called. I used the last of my reach to swipe the mirror aside and ruin the light line further. The opening pinched down. Roots whipping outward got caught in the seam and sheared off. A few landed on the outer rock, writhed in the dry evening air, and shrank to white threads. Then the granite closed on my arm to the elbow, and darkness fell over the seam. I was still on the inside. The shelf stayed lit by the valley's dull sky. Lucy lay where she had fallen. Her face had gone still at last. I sat with my back against the granite and looked at my right hand. From thumb to wrist the skin had turned pale and hard, more horn than flesh, with black threads running beneath it toward the sealed seam. Every beat of my pulse sent pain through it, though the beats themselves felt farther apart than before. Outside, muffled through stone, came the thud of boots or hammers and men striking the wall and calling my name. I answered once. The stone carried my voice away from them and returned it from somewhere deeper in the valley, older and calmer than mine. Sam. I shut my mouth. That was the final debt. The valley had my route now, my voice, my habit of calling the lost toward me. It had taken Arthur's knowledge, Mark's love, Erin's body, Lucy's shape, and enough of my blood to learn the sound a ranger makes when he wants somebody to trust him. I could still choose what to do with the time left. My knife rode in the sheath at my belt. I drew it and started carving into the stone beside the sealed seam. Arrows first, then words deep enough for a glove or flashlight beam to find if the door ever opened again. Keep out, use no power, shoot the returned, save the untouched. The blade skated on granite and bit where it could. My bad arm kept stiffening. I switched hands, cut slower, and kept going. The habit Arthur named in me had not died. Rescue still sat at the center of my bones. It just had a new shape now, narrower and meaner and honest. By the time I finished, the sky over the Thor shelf had changed color. That did not mean much here. I could not stay on the shelf. The stone had started taking my shoulder. White spurs pressed through the fabric at my sleeve. I got to my feet and found I could still walk. So I walked deeper. At the fire station, Arthur had become part of the wall, to the collarbones. His face still lived. His eyes found mine when I stepped inside. "You stayed," he said. "The boy got out." He took that in. A kind of peace crossed his face, though peace is too soft a word for what men like us get at the end. "You learned. Late. That is still learning." His mouth twitched. "Do me that favor now." I had left him alive once because I still believed time would bend. It had cost others. I did not repeat the error. I put the pistol in his mouth and fired. The station shook. Dust drifted from the rafters. Outside, voices started up in the fire corridor, men and women and children all using words somebody somewhere had once needed to hear. "Water here. Help me. Dad. Ben." I took Arthur's remaining maps and fed them into the stove. No reason to leave the valley a cleaner guide to itself. The flames licked blue for a moment, then settled. After that, the work changed. I learned where the bone trees grew thin enough to pass. I learned that silence drew less notice than argument. I learned that the valley favored grief because grief will follow a voice farther than fear. My right arm hardened to the shoulder, then across the upper chest. I stopped feeling hunger in any useful way. Sleep came in short snaps against stone. Once, in freeze, I found a fresh set of boot prints crossing the blue basin. A man had come through after me, maybe a hiker, maybe a ranger, maybe Luis, because Luis would go farther than good sense for me. I tracked the prints to a stand of white trunks where strips of orange survey tape fluttered from the branches. My tape. The valley had saved it, then hung it where another rescuer would trust it. I cut every strip down with my left hand and burned them in a hollow of black ice until the flames died on their own. That was rescue now. Deny the valley clean paths. Ruin its lures when you can. End the trapped before the next shift uses them. Move fast when a real human cry breaks from the rest and slower when hope starts feeling warm and easy. The valley kept taking pieces of me. My left hand stayed flesh and did the careful work. My right became pale and jointed and strong in ways no hand should be. My voice changed too. Sometimes I would test it and hear, under my own words, a second cadence rising from the stone, calm, capable, trustworthy. The voice of a man in uniform telling you help had arrived. The first time I heard that second layer, I bit the inside of my cheek until blood ran just to anchor myself in what was mine. Outside, I like to think Sam lived. I like to think Luis took the boy's warning and Arthur's maps and Mark's ring and built a wall of signs and chain and armed men around that basin. I like to think my son Owen heard some trimmed-down official version about his father lost on duty in a rockfall zone or washed off trail in a storm, because the true story would only hand him a door he might spend years trying to reopen. Those likes are all I own now. The facts are fewer. The seam opens when light and water and granite line up just so. The valley prefers the wounded, the grieving, and the loyal, because each of those makes a man carry what he should put down. And anything wearing my shape can still use a ranger's voice. The last time the door opened, I stood in the dark just beyond it and watched dusk pour across real stone. I heard voices outside. Searchers, maybe. Campers somewhere off route. One woman called into the gap for her husband. Every part of what remained of Ben Mercer wanted to answer with the truth. Go back, leave the seam, get clear of the wall. The valley rose in me with my own calm and offered a better line, one I had used 100 times on frightened strangers in snowfields and ravines. Stay where you are. I'm coming to you. I put my pale hand over my mouth and drove my teeth into the hard flesh until chips of it cracked loose. The voice still slipped out between them and drifted through the opening into the evening beyond.